This is the workspace for the demo, and this is in PowerBuilder 2017. This wizard system goes all the way back to the PB6, PB7 time frame. So this information I'm presenting will work with any older version of PowerBuilder you're using. This target here, PB Dev App, is all the libraries that make up the standard wizards. As I mentioned in the PowerPoint, there's a PowerBuilder runtime session going at all times while you're in the IDE. And this is the application object for that. Fset common, which I mentioned. There's base objects for quite a few controls. Common routines Unicode, and its ancestor object here. In the earlier versions of PowerBuilder, there's a common routines ANSI, which inherits from it. And here are the base windows. And there's base wizard, which you use to inherit your wizard window. PBADD has common Orca Unicode, Fset Orca, which I mentioned before. You'll notice the naming convention they have with the letter K and a number, and that's used to keep different versions of similarly named or same named objects separate. Not certain what the reasoning is for the particular numbers used. PBDWO is all data windows. You can see by the name some of them are having to do with pipelines and project wizards. This one, PBWDW, has what appears to be the new data window wizards. And so on. Generate is a target which I created to show that pbgen.dll is actually a pibble, which is used for the template applications. You'll notice the dollar signs in the object names, and that is used by the wizard to when it wants to create an object for the resulting application, it pulls the source code out of pbgen.dll, does a string replace to replace the dollar signs with some value that you entered in the wizard, takes that resulting string and then imports it into the pibble. So you can see they've got all sorts of objects that are used in the various template applications. So like MDI frame. PB compare is a target, or the PB compare target is a wizard I wrote for work, and I'll show you that. It doesn't use the framework window, but it does use the functions to get the list of targets in the workspace and the list of libraries that make up the selected target, and also lists the objects in those pibbles. And the purpose of this wizard is to compare object between a work library and its home library. TFS Wizard is another wizard that I wrote for work. We use TFS, but we're not connecting it directly to the PowerBuilder IDE. So we use Visual Studio to do check-ins and get latest version to mapped folders on our C drive. So this wizard imports and exports objects between the PowerBuilder libraries and the mapped folders on the C drive. This DW struct is the target which I'm going to use to show how to code a wizard using the framework. Let's run this first. You can see that it has a little image here on the left, and the purpose of this wizard is to convert a data window to a structure, or convert a structure to a data window, and then at the end it imports the created object into the Pibble. So here, see, it has a list of the targets. So I'll go here and choose the library, and there's one data window in there, and then the destination library, which would be a library in the same target, and it says set the object name, so it's defaulted that to S underscore, replacing the D underscore. So I go here, and this is the summary tab, and just click finish. Well, it's been a while since I've run this, so I'm not sure what that error is, but we'll see. Here I have well, this function, or this object, is one I wrote, which can be used to auto width grid data windows, which was added as a built-in feature, I think, in 12.5. Wizard Common is just a whole bunch of common functions that I created, including ones to, for example, this one will add messages to this output pane, and also there's functions for this one here for refreshing the system tree, or after creating a new object, so that you'll be able to see it. And my different tabs. There's some events. Deactivate is deactivate is called when the it's switching from that tab to the tab page to the next one. And here the IW parent, which is the parent window. There's a function fSaveData, which you can use to save information. It puts it into a data store instance variable in the base window. And let's look at another one. This one also has similar. And always code the deactivate event inside a if not AB back. AB back is the argument, so that tells it only do this if we're moving forward. And then I always do return ancestor return value. That way any the code that's in the event in the base object will get the return code from there. ePost event is the event that's triggered when you first displays the tab. So when you go from tab 1 to tab 2, the ePost event for tab 2 gets executed. So you can see here I've created common routines Unicode local variable, calling fsetCommon to create it. I did a fgetData to get the value of the target name from the window. Now all these values that you use fsetData to remember in that data store, those are the values that are displayed by the summary tab. So the summary tab, you don't have to make any changes to, just inherit an object from it and then it'll be good to go. So I'm doing an fsetCurrentTarget to make the selected target current. fgetCurrentApp returns the app name, app library, and library list here, which I'm storing in instance variables. Then I'm adding the libraries to the this is a picture list box control, and this is the library tab, so I've set the pictures to the library icon. So then at the end I use fsetCommon to destroy the object. And then it goes on to the object tab. So it first goes to the ePost event. And here I'm doing a similar thing. I'm calling library directory EX to get the library list of the selected library. And since this wizard only works with either data windows or structures, I'm using passing in that option instead of dir all. And here I'm using a data window, which is right here. And if I bring that up, the bitmap here uses the bitmap expression. So object bitmap column will have the name of the bitmap. And there's this function here in my NWizard common object, this get object bitmap. You pass in the object type and it returns the name of the bitmap file that's built into the wizard library, so that it'll display the proper bitmap in the list of objects. And then here in deactivate, similar to the other one, it gets the selected object name and does a fsave data. There's also some functions here. fvalidate can be used to perform edits. So if you don't want to allow them to go on to the next tab until, say, a certain field is a required entry, you can put code in there. To set the error message, you trigger the eSetError event. And these Boolean variables have to do with whether or not the next button is enabled or not. So here, if there's no error, I'm blanking out the error message and then changing the settings on the buttons. Other functions on the tab is, I haven't done anything with this. I don't know exactly how it works, but it has to do with setting up for to-do list entries. Is last, if you, the base summary tab page object sets is last to true, and by default it's set to false, and the window calls this function to determine if it's at the last tab page. Now now you have to tell the window obviously which tab pages to display and in what order. So in the window, while I'm here, I should mention that this bitmap here, you actually have to, if you want to be able to see it during development time, you actually have to have the bitmap file itself. Otherwise, it'll just be blank, and then at runtime you'll see it. So this BMP file, this bitmap, is built into the wizard library, so you don't have to like include it in your generated PBD with a PBR file. It'll take care of that. You only need the BMP at development time. And I actually extracted several of the wizard bitmaps from the DLL files, including this one. The eSetTitle event can be used optionally to customize the window title bar. And then there's some functions that you need to know about, and those include getNextPage, and the base window calls this function to determine what's the next tab page that I need to display. Because all of these tab pages are displayed dynamically. So I have a case statement here, and if AS page is blank, then I return the name of the first tab page object. So then once that's displayed and you click next, this function gets called again, and the value passed in AS page is the name of the tab that it's moving from, and then you return the name of the tab object that it's going to go to. There's also there's the finish, which is important. So when you get to at the last tab page, the finish button will activate, and when you click on it, it calls fFinish. So this is where you put all the code that's actually going to do whatever your wizard's purpose is. So I have a bunch of fgetData calls to get these options out of that instance data store. And since this is a dual purpose wizard, this process tells me whether it's data window to structure or structure to data window. And I have two functions which I created to perform either result. And then this f-invoke painter is a function object in the wizard libraries, which is used to, oh actually, let me take that back. It's a function of the base window, and it's used to open a object in its painter. So let me look at these other functions. There's also, I believe there's a validate. No, all the validate functions are on the tab pages. So here is the function which creates a data window syntax from a structure object. So I'm setting up my common routines, getting the current target and the application information, and I'm building the data window source code, and then using these the find class definition and related functions and structures. I'm looking to see what the various elements of the structure are, and just kind of building that up into the syntax of the data window. Here I'm let's see, adding some headers to the syntax, and then the columns, the display columns. And then I have my object comment, and then this this library import is a function in my NWizard common, which I just used to encapsulate the Orca functions that are involved in importing objects into the library. And then if the import was successful, I call the systree refresh function and then return true. Otherwise, I use this event to set the error message. And then the WF create structure is similar, except it's looking at the data window and building the source code of a structure object. Now, let's see if we can figure out what that abort was all about. Well, first let's see if the structure, well, we don't have a structure object, so let's see. Actually, let me just do the one in here. Oh, that one worked. So if you can see here, I ran the wizard and it generated this new structure object from D library directory and called it S library directory. And it's got the elements match the elements of the columns in the data window object. And if you look at, and this is what the source code of a structure object looks like, so it just basically went through the definition of the columns in the data window and created this syntax and imported it into the library. Let's see if I run the other one, structure to data window, and we'll choose, let's say, S demo, and we'll generate a data window called ddemo. Now you can see when it did this, the toolbars are a little haphazard. That won't happen when you're running it in a deployed fashion. It's just something that happens occasionally when using runman and the opening objects in their painters. But you can see that here it's created the columns that match the SDemo structure. Now we'll see how we can add this wizard to the IDE. First is to create a PBD. So I'm going to right click on here and use Build Runtime Library, which is sufficient because in most cases your wizards won't be too complex and they'll all be contained in one library. And if you have custom image files, you'll want to have a PBR file, which you can set here. And incremental build is probably fine. And, yeah. Okay, when you do a PBD create, you'll always get an error tab here, and basically it's complaining that it wasn't able to read the source code of these objects that are, and the reason for that is because they're in actually PBDs that are renamed as DLL, so there's no source code available. So those errors you can just ignore. So the next step would be to exit out of PowerBuilder and go into the registry editor. You can see I'm already in local machine, Sybase PowerBuilder 17.0. Wizard libraries, this is a folder you'll have to add. And then over here you list the different PBD files which will be added to the IDE's library list at startup. You have to list each one separately. You can't put more than one together with a semicolon separating it like you can do with the regular applications library list. And each entry has to have the name be a number, and they have to be in sequence. So if you have 3, it has to be 1, 2, 3. If you go 1, 2, 4, number 4 will be ignored. If you want your wizard to appear on the new window, you have to create this CLS ID folder, and then below that, each item on the new window that you're adding has to have a GUID as the folder here. So I actually used the create GUID function from the wizard library itself to create these. And the values under that GUID folder, default is the description that appears under the icon. Default icon is where it finds the icon. You can use an icon file or a DLL. Now, icon files and DLLs can have hundreds of different icons together. So you use a comma and then a number to tell it which specific icon within that file is to be used. And those numbers are 0 based. So the first icon image in the DLL or ICO file is icon number 0. The next value, tool, tells it which tab of the new window this wizard is going to be placed. If tool is blank, it goes on the tool tab. If you want it on one of the other tabs, you'd have to specify its name. And then URL tells it how to open the wizard window. And you can see that starts with wizard : entry equals, and then the window name. And this syntax is the same when you add a toolbar in the IDE, which I'll show that to you. So both of those use the same syntax. And you can see here I have another one. Now let me bring PowerBuilder back up. So now that our the registry settings are all there, we can add this wizard to the toolbar. So I need to remember my window name, so I'm just going to be lazy and copy it here. So then you go to Tools, Toolbars, Customize, and then click Custom, and then move this over, and we'll see where you want to put it. And let's use this one. Drag that down there, and this pops up, and then you type in wizard : entry equals, and then the window name. And then here is the item text, which is what's shown when you have the toolbar set to large buttons. And this can only be a short value, so I'll just make it DW struct. This can be longer. It's the micro help, which displays down at the bottom of the MDI frame. And we'll just put the same thing in here. And OK, and close. So you can see now I have the button here. And you see I got an error. Well, the reason for that is that I forgot to copy the PBD into the shared PowerBuilder folder. So I have to close PowerBuilder again. And we'll go in here. Here's my PBD. And so your Sybase, if you're using a Sybase version of PowerBuilder, you want to go to Sybase shared PowerBuilder. If it's an Appian version of PowerBuilder, you want to go to the Appian shared PowerBuilder. Paste in your PBD file. Now I can start PowerBuilder back up again. Now, it's not supposed to do that. Oh, you know what? I forgot to actually add it to the wizard libraries. Okay. So we'll do that too. And what did I call that? DW struct 170. DW struct 170.pbd. Alright, should work this time. But of course the library list is set when the IDE starts. So I have to go back out and in again. All right. There we go. And you can see it works. So. Yeah, you can see that my images for the structure object appear to be from older version of PowerBuilder. So I'll show you how that why that is and how you can fix it. So here, yes, it's the data window. So deactivate post event. Yeah, see this function here is returning the wrong value. So, object bitmap. See, I wrote this function in an earlier version of PowerBuilder, but didn't update it. So these are the names of the bitmap files that are built in for earlier versions of PowerBuilder, but as you know, PowerBuilder 2017, they introduced new bitmaps for the objects, and let me see if I can, I'm not sure. Let me see. I have a program here. Well, I won't get into that, which will figure out what that is, but this will have to be changed. On the the library tab, however, I'm using a picture list box. So you can see that I'm using library icon _2 for the image, whereas for older versions I would use, there we go here, library list 5, or this one, library 5, or if it was before 10.5, you'd use library. So I think that's about it for this presentation. Now, if you want to connect with the Appian community, the user forum is a great place. This is the address here. And Appian occasionally posts good information on Facebook and Twitter, so you can follow them there. Thank you.